On today's podcast, we talk about escaping the comparison trap and most importantly, how to stay in your own lane and scale with confidence. And I promise you, this is a common topic, a common term, and something that everybody works through. And so I break down exactly what it is, why it happens, and steps to take today to mitigate it, to allow you to follow your path on your timeline to get your results, to have a business in alignment with you so that you can scale with confidence and love your business and yourself in the process. So all of that is in today's episode. So let's get into the show. So I have an important question because I am guilty of it as well. But have you ever looked at someone else's success or highlight reels or accomplishments and felt like you were behind, that you missed it, that it got given to somebody else instead of you? Like maybe you see their launch results, or you see their quote unquote luxury vacations, or their effortless growth. And suddenly it just leads to doubt and overwhelm and questioning everything. And truthfully, one of the biggest traps that I fell into most of my life and career, now one that I dance with, but only slightly now, is the comparison trap. And it is the biggest mindset prison when it comes to entrepreneurship, and it even applies to life as well. But in the online business world, especially given now with the rise of social media and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and podcasts and everything, we see everybody's highlight reels, but yet we don't see real life, and we still fall victim to comparing ourselves. And the challenge with comparison, and the thing that genuinely happens, is it creates massive, massive self-doubt, which in turn leads to absolutely turtle-paced or slow-paced decision-making. And then sometimes, and with a lot of my clients, like 2 of my one-on-one clients that I'm working through right now, can lead you to chasing or building a business model that is not meant for you, that's not right for you, that's not in alignment for you. And the number one step to be able to win the game is to have an awareness that it happens and to have practical ways to refocus on your path. And one of the things I talk about all the time is that your vision is yours. A lot of the times, and I still struggle with this from a self-promotion standpoint, people interview me and they ask me about my podcast, or they ask me about my book launch and how I was a 22-week New York Times bestseller, or they ask me how we hit a number one app in the world, or even some of the companies that I've helped scale. Like, how did you do it? And truthfully, if you were to look at it on paper, everybody would have said it wouldn't work or it shouldn't be done because it hadn't been done before. And it was like an idea that I had and a thought that I had. And I was like, but I'm going to make this thought mine. I'm going to make this evolution mine. I'm going to make this book launch mine so it feels right to me. And I promise you that this can be done practically. But the first step is acknowledging that if you ever exist or you ever live in the comparison trap, you're not alone. We all have it. We live in a world and a society that like throws it in our face constantly. And it's designed to make us do that exact thing, to doubt ourselves, to compare ourselves, to really take our power away, take our God-given gifts away, and prevent us from taking the actions that make things ours, or makes the path ours, or the vision ours. And so it's important to understand. And I found for myself in my own life that the more I understand something and why things happen or why they exist, the more I can recognize them when they come up. And I think that that's what's so important about comparison, right? And like, we've had a lot of psychologists on this show. I love psychology. I've studied it. But when we think about comparison, like, we also have to understand it's like human beings, our brains are wired to compare as a survival mechanism, right? We're looking people up and down, we're checking threats, we're assessing what's here. We're constantly running through the lens of what we have, what we don't have. And I believe like social media and online business amplify this a millionfold. And I even got interviewed on a podcast today, and they were asking about my early mentors and where I got coaching. And I had to go all the way back. And this was like 2010. And I realized that back then we weren't really on social. Like, Facebook was still college email addresses only, and there weren't like big social media platforms. There was the occasional one-off podcast, but everything else was done in person. Everything else, we'd meet at events, we'd have meetings, we'd have conversations, we'd call and text each other on the phone. But there wasn't this overabundance of consuming all of these things to create comparisons in our life. And so we'd get together and we'd workshop and we'd brainstorm and we'd mastermind. But we weren't really worried about comparison because we were all coming together in this shared vision. And it's really important to recognize that a lot of the fields that we live on, the way that we operate business, the places that we do our business are critical for our growth and utilizing them, but they can also be massively damaging and massively overwhelming, because it also leads to us seeing this thing that we see, which is like the illusion of overnight success, or they just made it overnight, right? And we have to understand that, like, even the psychology of social, and this is not everybody, because I follow some incredible people who don't only post wins, but really we see a whole lot of the highlight reel. We see the wins. We don't see the failures. We don't see the pivots. We don't see the years of struggle. And then we compare that to ourselves, and it creates this false measuring stick, like, oh, it's supposed to be easy. Or when I go launch that funnel the first time, it's going to work. When I build that customer journey, it's going to be perfect. Or when I make a course, everyone's going to show up to buy it. And it couldn't be further from the truth. But, you know, those 6-figure launches you see, or those big wins that you see, they don't show the ad spend. They don't show the team costs. They don't show the past flops leading up to it. And even reminds me of one of my clients who scaled their business after we worked together, not fully on me, like it was both of us in team, and they did an incredible job. But it was his 23rd startup, 22nd or 23rd startup. And the first 22 failed, lost money, lost all these other things. And then this one, it was like all the pieces came together, and he was able to look at it and be like, I'm going to focus on this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Then had $1 billion exit and, you know, changed his life forever. But we'll see the exit and we won't see the backstory, and we fall into comparing ourselves over and over and over again. And so, like, why do we fall into the comparison trap? Well, number one is that it's wired into us. So unless we effectively and proactively mitigate it or manage it or protect ourselves, it's going to come in. Number two is we're surrounded by this illusion of like overnight success, and it's so easy. Like, you can get abs in a day, like 6-minute abs, and all of these other things that have been around for years that we've all been on the internet. And then number three is we all have our own internal triggers, right? We have our own stories that kind of fuel comparison. We have unknown circumstances or uncertainty about our own business growth or our personal growth. Sometimes, myself included, we lack clarity in like what our unique gift is and what our strengths are, to the point where, like, even to this day, I get feedback from my partner, from my clients, from my business partners, and I screenshot them on my phone, and I have to read them sometimes, like read them to bring me to tears, because I spent so much of my life making mistakes, and so much of my life unintentionally hurting people or not getting the results I wanted, that sometimes I don't allow myself to see myself in the mirror how other people see me. Or the big one, and the big culprit, which I'm guilty of for sure, is operating from scarcity instead of abundance. And when we start to understand like why we fall into the comparison trap, it brings to our awareness all the areas where it's happening, so that we can make an adjustment. We bring it kind of into our conscious mind, and we realize when we're in the doom scroll, or when we're supposed to be writing an email or making a social post, but we got distracted and ended up in the death scroll. Or we look at something like, oh, must be nice to have. Or we even catch ourselves on the inside having conversations with ourselves that aren't supportive. And the goal of understanding why this happens is to really arm us, like just like a triage nurse, with the symptoms that show up. So when they happen, we can shift from them. Like, we can break free from that cycle. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not a one and done. It's this ongoing journey of catching it and adjusting it, catching it and shifting it, catching it and choosing a different path. And so when we really break down, like, how do you shift or how do you break free from the comparison cycle, the number one thing to know is that it's never going to go away. I mean, I've met a few people that I feel like they don't have it at all. But in my lens personally, and I can only speak for myself, it's not that it goes away. It's that I build a relationship with it. And I understand when this happens, this is the negative result. But when this happens, if I shift it, here comes the positive result. And so really, when it comes down to like, how do you shift it? You basically shift it in like 4 ways. So the number one way to shift it is to shift from comparison to inspiration, right? And these are like actual tangible things that you can ask yourself and you can do. So instead of thinking like, why them and not me? Or why did they win and I didn't? Ask yourself a different question. What is this showing me about what's possible for me? What in this do I feel like I can achieve and I might not be doing? And one of the things that we've heard for years is that success leaves clues. But in understanding that like success leaves clues, our job is to study and then implement, not envy and delay our decision making or delay our actions. So that's number one, is actually shifting the stories that we tell ourselves by shifting the questions that we say. And Sharon Lecter, who wrote Outwitting the Devil, who I love you, Sharon, if you're listening to this, has this incredible model that our thoughts dictate our words, which dictate our actions. But a way to shift and to stop the comparison trap is to stop it in its tracks when it's a thought before it becomes our words and before it leads into our actions. So that's number one. Number two is to heavily fortify and protect your environment. So unfollow and curate your inputs. The noise is very noisy, right? The world is very noisy. The noise is very noisy. Yes, the noise is noisy, but the world is very noisy, right? We're inundated and surrounded. Television, Netflix, YouTube, ads, podcasts, social. But we also forget that we are 100% in control of those inputs. And in order for us to be supportive of ourselves, we have to curate those inputs to make sure that we're feeding our brain the information that's going to give us the best belief and allow us to take action. And a dear friend of mine, which a lot of you might know, Jim Quick, love him to pieces, but I was in his apartment one day, God, probably a decade ago. And he said, George, your problem is that you're living everybody else's life because you don't control what you consume. And what you consume is programming the supercomputer of your brain that's dictating your actions. And it's a really powerful concept, but every single thing that we consume and let in is having an impact on the view in which we see the world, leading to this comparison. And so if you find yourself like constantly triggered or upset or falling into a trap or comparison or envious of somebody's content, you need to mute them and unfollow them. But your job is to fill your feed or to fill your environment with people who you inspire you, who encourage you, who when you see it like motivates you to take an action for you or inspires you to step into your power without making you feel less than. And that's step two, is curating and protecting your environment. Step number three is grounding yourself in your own journey. Grounding yourself in your own journey. And I love this one, and it sounds like a broken record half the time, but it's so true that the only person that you should compare yourself to is the yesterday or past you. And there's an incredible book by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan on this called The Gap and the Gain, where the comparison can happen because we're looking so far ahead at the gap that we haven't come over yet that we forget to take a turn around and look at the gain that we made. So we're currently living in, no matter what your circumstances, no matter what your life is, no matter what your results is, a previous version's dream of our life. But all too often we forget to acknowledge it. We forget to celebrate it because we think that once we've made it, it's going to keep itself, when in actuality, it's a muscle that requires us to work it out quite frequently and quite often to keep it at the forefront of our mind. Just like you can go to the gym and you can lose 30 pounds, but if you stop going to the gym, there's a chance you're going to lose that strength and the weight's going to come up. You can go run and get your mile time down to 7 minutes a mile, but if you don't keep running to maintain it, eventually it will go back up and it's never going to get faster. And it's the same thing with our entrepreneurial journey. If we're not constantly and consistently taking inventory of our wins, of our growth, and our lessons learned, then we're going to allow the old patterns and the comparison to come in because we're not working the muscle of the new that we want. But we also have to understand, and this might even sound woo-woo for you, but in the current moment where we are, in every single one of our situations, we are exactly where we need to be for our next breakthrough. But in order to get to that breakthrough, we have to do a past reflection. We have to take an inventory of all of our wins that got us here, see the growth that happened, get to the bottom of how we grew there, find the areas that are no longer working, look at the lessons that we've learned and extracted from those, and then take action to make a plan to get that next result. So that's the third one, is grounding yourself in your own journey. And then the fourth one is redefining success on your terms. And this is probably the number one thing that comes up with private clients of mine or consulting clients is when we start unpacking their goals, they end up realizing that the goals they're striving to achieve were goals that other people created for them out of the comparison trap, from pressure, not from alignment. And so I'll ask them, like, is your goal really 7 figures in the next 30 days? Or do you feel pressure because somebody else hit that? Is your goal really a $10 million business? Because here's what it might look like or might cost you. And I'd say 9.5 out of 10 times what we realize is that the goals that people are achieving or chasing or striving for aren't their actual goals. It's a combination of all the noise that came in from not protecting the inputs and these false measuring sticks that are created that they have to live up to. Instead of asking themselves the very, very important question is, what kind of business and lifestyle do you want that actually feels good to you? What would your day look like? Like, would you love to be on calls 18 hours a day running that mastermind or course? Or would it be better to stay at 8 hours a day and maybe only build $1 million business instead of a $3 million business, or find another avenue to do it? And we have to be really, really honest with ourselves, but we also have to give ourselves the space to define what success looks like for us. And I've learned personally that any success that's tied to a revenue number or a goal is fleeting and it never sticks around. It has to be designed and aligned to a lifestyle or a vision for what you want your day to look like and how you want to feel as you operate that day. And in order to do this, and just like I said earlier, this isn't a one and done. It's not I do it once at the beginning of the year, I do it once and it's done forever. It's a consistent daily practice. And as resistant as I am to consistency, and I mean this, I struggle a lot. Like, I struggle sometimes when my calendar's full and it's those things that I know like get to be done, but I'm like, oh, do I have to today? I kind of want to sit on the couch. But really, it's the compound effect and the byproduct of us consistently taking actions that allow us to move towards our vision and to compare ourselves only to ourselves and to integrate the lessons that we learn. And it really boils down to like just 3 clear steps. So number 1, and you've heard me talk about this a ton on the podcast, is having a gratitude practice and success journaling. But even if every day you just went on Amazon and bought the 5-minute journal, and the 5-minute journal is incredible because it's really, really simple. But at the end of every day, you got to write down 3 things that you were grateful for and at least 1 win, no matter how big or small. It could be as simple as like, I actually took a shower today, or I took an hour to eat my lunch and didn't fast because I was too busy working, or I created a new piece of content, or I learned a new task or a skill, or it could be as big as like I achieved all my goals, but like genuinely forcing our brain into the gratitude bucket. And there's plenty of famous quotes on this and scientific research that gratitude and anxiety can exist at the same time. And the comparison trap typically leads to anxiety, which leads to inaction because of our fear of what we don't have out of that envy. And so number 1 is gratitude and success journaling. It's genuinely having a habit, and I've been falling into the habit, if you're looking at this, of using construction paper. Like, I keep blank construction paper on my desk and they're filled with notes. And sometimes there's lessons I learn, and I'll have a win in the day and then I'll write it down. And then I'll take the time to like celebrate myself so that I also have a chronological thing to look back on and integrate myself in when I'm comparing to my journey and having reminders of the things that I've curated and learned along the way, instead of taking that time and consuming social or scrolling through YouTube or falling deep in like a 6-hour YouTube short rabbit hole and not sleeping. And so it's a really, really powerful practice. So number 1 is gratitude and success journaling. Number 2, and I think this is probably the most profound and powerful one that shifted me in business about a decade ago, is turn competition into connection. Turn competition into connection and potentially collaboration. So instead of feeling threatened or overwhelmed or envious, like, engage with people that you admire. Collaborate with people instead of competing. And I know personally, like, I even had breakfast and coffee this morning with somebody that I was almost scared to approach because of who they are in the world and what they've done in the world and what they've achieved in the world. And finally I asked a friend, I'm like, hey, will you make an intro and see if we can get a cup of coffee? And we had coffee this morning and we cried together as men. We were hugging each other as men. And I was like, how can I serve you? How can I help you? He's like, God, I just want to hang out and be friends. But there's an old version of me that would have been petrified to have that conversation, thinking I didn't belong in the room or I didn't have anything to add. But really what shifted it was focusing on connection and focusing on caring and realizing like my gift from God and my value is innate in who I am, not in the things that I do or the things I've accomplished or how many followers I have or how much business I've done. None of those things matter. And so number 2 is turning competition into connection. And so when we feel those moments and we're in that trap, reaching out and engaging or giving them positive affirmations, like amping them up, like celebrate winning and help people win more, because it starts to shift how we see the world and it shifts the way we operate through the world, because the world that we live in is celebrate everybody's wins and everybody gets more wins. And so that's number 2. And then number 3 is to have a daily reminder that no one has your unique path. No one. The most successful people are not the best. They are the ones that are the most aligned with themselves. And one of the way that I have clients do this of mine is we'll have moments or we'll have a conversation and we'll have an incredible breakthrough of like, God, that's it. Like I feel it. And they can literally look at me and articulate it super, super clearly. I'm like, do me a favor right now. I'm going to stay on Zoom with you, but I want you to open up your phone and I want you to record an audio of yourself speaking about that goal or your life or your business in current tense, like in this moment, like it already happened, like 3 years in the future. Go. And they'll be their own hype man. And they'll be like, oh my God, like I love it. I'm doing this. I'm spending my time here. I'm spending 4 hours a day playing with my kids. I'm only working from 10 to 3. My clients feel amazing. My team feels amazing. We're leading people through this. We just finished our last event after our first 10. We have this product. We have this. And they record it in the present tense. And then the goal is to listen to it every single day, because our voices bypass the filters in our brain because it's ours. And we're basically hearing it and reminding ourselves of who we are and what we want to achieve and how we want to get there, which is a very tangible way to anchor yourself in. And then some of them go so far as to like set it as their alarm tone in their phone. They listen to it every morning. They listen to it every afternoon. They listen to it every evening. But it's a really, really powerful practice to remind yourself that no one has your unique path. And so I'm going to encourage you to take some time this week to do an audit. I want you to really, really take some time. And I think the most important one in all of this is looking at the environment, looking at the things that you allow in, looking at the things that you've curated, that you're consuming, and make sure that they're bringing you empowerment or faith or joy or excitement or calling you to be greater. But I want you to do an audit as you go through your week, as you look at yourself on your social or on your phone or in your inbox or in meetings. And I want you to really, really start to audit what it is that's like lighting you up and inspiring you to take that next action. And what are the things that are leading to that comparison trap? And so this week, here's my challenge. I encourage you at minimum to unfollow or unconsume or stop consuming or unsubscribe from one account minimum that triggers comparison. And in the same vein, find one that inspires you and replace it. That's it. It's that simple. And if you do that once a day, every single day, before you know it, you'll be surrounded by positivity. I used to remember my Instagram feed and algorithm was full of like marketing content and all these different things. And now 100% it's full of food and Bible verses, food and Bible verses. And the food motivates me to stay in shape, and the Bible verses motivate me to walk in obedience to God and to love people and to stand for people and to bring that view into my life and my day every day, because that's what I'm seeing when I open my phone. And so my challenge for you is to do the same. And you don't owe anybody an explanation for this, because it's your world and your environment, but you're dictating what music is played in that world. And if you don't like the song, you either skip it or remove it from the playlist and add another one that brings you joy. Because you have to remember that what you are building is your version of success, no one else's. And your job is to trust your timeline and stay in your lane while continuing to push forward. And so I would love to know, and I would actually love to crowdsource this one for me, because I'm pretty bullish on environmental design. I did an entire podcast on it on this show. What are the ways in which you're going to end the comparison and support yourself in this? Either tag me on Instagram at It's George Bryant, or shoot me a DM and share with me. And just for some tangible ways, even my Spotify has specific playlists in it. George's Mood Booster, George's Faith Songs, George's Energy Reset, where I consume only music that inspires me or encourages me or shifts my brain. I also have a very curated YouTube. I have a very curated Instagram. My phone and my texts are set up in groups, so only certain people come through throughout the day, and other ones only come through in limited time windows, but I'm always looking. And if we get enough responses, I'll do an entire episode on protecting your environment and curating your environment in your feed. But I would love to know, like, what was your biggest takeaway from today's show? And post it and share it and let everybody else in your community know what you're doing and invite them to do the same. And I promise you that you'll be shocked when you start to play the game this way and protect your environment, how that comparison starts to get mitigated and goes down and down and down. But you also have clear actions to take that will allow you to get back on the field to build your vision, to build your version of success, and to do it on your timeline and in your lane, not somebody else's. And so that's what I have for today. And this was on my heart based on a lot of conversations I've had with entrepreneurs this week. And I wanted to share because I also think it's important to know. I don't think it goes away. I think we build a relationship with it. And the more we surround ourselves with other people who support us and call us forward, I think that's what community is for. I think that's what coaching is for. I think that's my favorite part of coaching my one-on-one clients. The scaling is fun. The emails are fun. The customer journey is fun. The marketing is fun. The messaging is fun. But the thing that lights me up the most is seeing them stand in a business and stand in a life that they're proud of and they're excited to come after every day because it's theirs. And I think that's the invitation for all of us. And so I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day. I hope you have a beautiful whatever day of the week this is. I want you to remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. And now for me, most importantly, the one with God. And so have an absolutely beautiful day. God bless. I'll either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.